Usually, almost all children are sent to their grandparents in the village for the summer. But they sent me to my older sister. Julia lived in a small town where there were not many residents. Why, there were almost none of them at all. Let's just say that my sister was not very happy to see her annoying 13-year-old brother, but she tried not to show it. "Listen carefully, little one," she said, putting her hands on her hips. "Walk around the city as much as you want, but by the time it starts to get dark, return home immediately. Understand?" I nodded, looking bored, and went to the room that would be mine for the duration of my stay here. I didn't know what to do with myself. Looking out the window, I saw that clouds were beginning to gather in the sky. It will rain soon. Despite this, I suddenly felt the urge to go for a walk. Having told my sister that I would go and get some fresh air, I went outside. There was not a soul outside. Perhaps there is no one on the streets because of the gloomy weather, which could worsen even more any moment, I thought. But there really isn't a single person around. It's not that I feel lonely when I'm not surrounded by people, but that the streets of a small town are so deserted. I walked forward slowly, without thinking about how I could find my sister's house later. After wandering around the area for about 30 minutes, I came across an old abandoned playground. Much to my surprise, I found 6 guys there. There were 3 boys and 3 girls. After watching them for some time, I decided to go up to the site and sit on the nearest bench, the paint on which had already worn off and peeled off. All the swings on the playground were rusty and creaky, so I wondered how children could still play here. Although, perhaps they simply had no choice, and this was the only playground in the area. There was still a little time left until the evening, and I stayed to watch the children. They played various games, and everything would have been fine. But what spoiled the picture? They all had sad eyes. For a moment I felt uneasy, and a cold breeze ran through my whole body. The children sat down on a bench that stood parallel to the one I was sitting on. Then one of the girls stood up and looked at the others. "What is it, Marianne?" "The name is beautiful, apparently ancient," I thought, and again began to listen to what the children were talking about. "I want to play hide and seek." It fell to one boy to search. Everyone else ran to hide. Next to the playground there was a forest, and not just a small forest or a small planting consisting of several groups of trees, but quite a large, dense, and widely spread forest. At that moment, a thought occurred to me. Aren't parents afraid to leave their children unattended on a playground located next to such and such a huge forest? Nowadays, there are so many drug addicts and other parasites hanging out in the forest, and here the children are playing. You never know what can happen. Watching the boy prowl around in search of hidden friends, I'll sit here a little longer, and then I'll go home. When everyone had already been found, the girl, whose name was Marianne, suddenly threw back her head and looked at the cloudy sky. Then she took a quick glance towards that same forest. I just now noticed that it was already getting dark outside. "I think I'll go," Marianne muttered, staring blankly in front of her. The children immediately, silently followed the girl. "I think it's time for me too," I thought, and, getting up from the bench, headed home. When I returned, I quietly opened the door to my sister's room. She was already asleep. I went to my room and soon fell asleep. As I fell asleep, I heard the rain drumming on the glass of the window. Second day today, the weather is no better than yesterday, and there are still almost no people on the streets. The weather was deteriorating every day, and it was June outside. I couldn't sit at home and was dragged out for a walk again. Having again warned my sister about my departure, I went to wander around the city. Eventually, I came across that playground again. All those 6 guys played there again. I felt glued to the bench and watched them with interest, until I noticed that it was starting to get dark. I was not surprised when I saw that there were no children on the playground anymore. They always leave before it gets dark, apparently very obedient. Day 3, I'm sitting on the playground with a book in my hands. These guys always seem to play hide and seek before going home. Day 4, why am I here again? But somehow, I watch them play again. It's good that I'm only 13. If I were older, the locals would have considered me a maniac and called the police. It seems to me that the children have been sad about something for some time now. After coming home, as always, I play a little games on the computer and fall asleep exhausted. A week has passed. All this time I visited that playground like a weak-willed person. I don't know why, but my legs carried me there as soon as I went outside. Over these few days, I have noticed some strange things in children's behavior. They never go home alone. They go at the same time and all together, as if they are afraid of something. Each time they play the same games and in the same order, leaving hide and seek for later. Apart from these 6, no other children appear on the playground, and I have never seen at least one person pass by. And yes, One more thing. They never, you hear, never smile. There is always sadness in their eyes, and their gazes are empty and terrifying. And one more thing. They don't seem to notice me. It's like I'm a ghost. I lay on the bed thinking about how to spend today. Quite a lot of time has passed, and I have not yet done anything that could somehow diversify my life as a slacker. Having not come up with more than one interesting option for spending time, I turned on the computer and decided to while away a couple of hours wandering the internet. I am one of those people who like to read horror stories during the day, and then at night, shake with fear under the covers from any rustle, unable to sleep. So, while I was looking for horror stories, I came across an article from a newspaper. I found it interesting and decided to read its contents. When the article was read, I cautiously turned my gaze to the photographs posted below. I didn't have to look closely. These were the same children I had seen every day for the past week. Horror overwhelmed me. The same question was spinning in my head. How can this be? The next day, I plucked up courage and decided to visit the playground one more time to make sure that the article was a complete fabrication. And on the playground, ordinary children, as always, play hide and seek in the evenings. Yesterday's article was constantly spinning in my head. Here I am, empty, just a clearing overgrown with weeds. There is no trace or evidence that there might once have been an old playground here. I looked around. Not far from this place there was a small garden. Oddly enough, I only noticed it now. Taking a closer look, I saw an old woman sitting there on a flimsy wooden bench. Having said hello, I pointed my finger at the clearing and asked where the children's playground that had stood there the day before had so suddenly disappeared. Grandma looked at me in surprise and then answered, "Well, this site has been gone for 10 years. It took me a few seconds to digest the information I received. An article I recently read started spinning in my head. June 8, 2005, 6 children went missing in a small town. Each of them was approximately 5 to 7 years old. The last time the children were seen was when they were playing on a playground near a forest plantation. Later, torn and mutilated bodies were found in the same forest, 3 girls and 2 boys. The body of the 6th child was not found, but bones were discovered that apparently once belonged to a small missing boy. Most of the residents left the city after the incident. The population dropped significantly. Below, you can see photographs of the unfortunate children over several days before the tragedy. Grandmother put her wrinkled hands on her knees and lowered her head. I remember how the local children loved to play hide and seek in the evenings. I told them, don't even think about running into the forest. The creature dragged them away, every single one of them. I somehow made it home on weak legs. He locked the apartment with all the locks and sat down on the bed, staring blankly in front of him. All the time they acted as if I was not there, but yesterday, they invited me to play with them.